journey of 1,000 miles is said to begin with one step. One of my biggest problems personally, and I know this is a problem that is shared by my civil society colleagues in this report, is that that journey has not even started for the poorest of the poor in this country. And that is what this conversation is about. In fact, instead of that journey starting, it is regressing, going backwards. If you look at every single indicator that's being reviewed at the United Nations this year, major targets are regressing. So we talk about, for instance, the fact that now the unemployment level for young people is almost at 60%. For young people in this country. We talk about the fact that only 10% in the black population of people who should be at tertiary schools are not in tertiary schools. And you ask the question, where are they loitering? If they are not in employment, they are not in tertiary education. We look at every single one of those indicators and we say, South Africa has had incredible gains in certain areas. But in the last few years, particularly if you are saying, we're looking at a global agenda that we have adopted in our National Development Plan that is supposed to be putting front and center the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, and those that are usually excluded. And we're saying we haven't even begun that journey in terms of looking at the results, not in terms of looking at what processes we've put in place. Who's with me? Civil society in South Africa is bleeding right now. It started 15 years ago when they decided to call us a middle-income country. And suddenly those people that were supporting us with the resources and the capacities that we needed to do what we need to do suddenly said, no, sorry, we're too busy with least developed countries, as it were.
I would just say it is because sustainable development is a conversation that matters in this country. It is because we have a good understanding of what development is, but we need to add the adjective of sustainable so that we are able to understand if we plan and plan correctly, the moment we get things right, they can be sustained.
Thus far, 111 voluntary national reviews have been presented at a high-level political forum on sustainable development, and since 2016 we have looked at further 51 that are due to be presented in 2019, and South Africa is due to its first voluntary national review in July 2019. South Africa, as one of the member states, has committed to working with all stakeholders towards achieving the SDGs as a country, and we want to make sure that we move forward together in terms of looking at social inclusions, equality for everyone, and leaving no one behind.
There are main three issues that we would have to build this upon. Globally, there is unanimous agreement that the development goals as we are working with can be achieved within the framework of revitalized global partnership. If I would live here having said partnerships 100 times, forgive me, but I think if that does not gel in our minds, we are not going to even start implementing SDGs in our country.
In 2019, 47 countries will be reporting on the VNR, on their own VNRs. Out of that, 15 are from Africa. Other countries in Africa include some of our neighbors. You have Ghana, but then in our neighborhood here, you have Mauritius, you have Lesotho, you have Eswatini. Those are some of the countries that will also be reporting from here. And the theme is empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and inequality. At some level, many countries, including South Africa, they have their domesticated indicators. But then the collection of some of these data is a challenge. The other thing is on stakeholder engagement. They should be very much encompassing. Developing the VNR should include all stakeholders in the process.
And the question is, how do we make up for the time? You know, with poverty, once you have not gotten the right nutrition at the right time, you are stunted for life. And if we don't take it seriously, as you say, we will be stunted for life. So can we have the next speaker, please, Desmond?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to everybody. I think I probably have the easiest job here this morning because as a statistician, I have no taste buds for anything other than numbers. So the other things go beyond me, it flies over my head. And so I want to bring us to what underpins the discussions that we should be having around the SDGs and around the state of the SDGs and how far we have gone and what the issues are that still persist within our country. And for this discussion to be meaningful, we need to have good quality data. That's the unfortunate thing, is that it comes down to a proper measurement framework. We need to measure the right things for the situation within which we find ourselves.
But what we have also might not have realized is that by the time we have our Agenda 2030 in South Africa in 2012, we were ahead. We already understood what needs to be done in South Africa for the betterment of the livelihoods of the people of South Africa.
The question now we have to ask is, how do we make up for the time that we have lost? We've talked about a journey of 1,000 miles that has, as civil society, has taken us all of these years to get us to even in one room with the challenges and the troubles that we have had. Now, if you knew me, you would know that I'm a yellow person. I like to look at positive stories, but there's very few positive stories to tell in the story of the journey of how we've gotten here. And my concern is we don't want to leave without facing the real challenges of how do we address these institutional difficulties that we have in order to move this agenda forward. It's a process of dialogue and engagement inside the country to say, where are we missing the big issues? How do we change that? And that reflection is supposed to be a dialogue that leads to us behaving differently in order to accelerate implementation. The problem we have at the moment is that we have taken the VNR process as a report writing, box ticking process where we are saying we have a VNR report and we're not having the conversation around how are we going to engage with our municipalities who at this stage are not even aware of the commitments we've made, and say to them, you need to prioritize this sector of the population. And how do we make sure that going towards 2030, that particular segment of the population is brought front and center.
The NDP continues to be the lodestar, but our ability to implement the SDGs and show the world that we understand our country